All right, everyone. It is 11 o'clock, so I will go ahead and get us started. Good morning. I am Taylor Post, Swiflin's office manager, and I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar, Web Design Trends in 2022, and today's presenter, Diana Silvera. Diana Silvera is a librarian and president of Novare Library Services, where she works with libraries to develop, implement, and utilize technology effectively. Previously, she was employed by the Tampa Bay Library Consortium and the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Library. She has an MLIS from UNC Greensboro and a BS in psychology from Catawba College. Her book, Library Technology Planning for Today and Tomorrow, published by Rowman and Littlefield in 2018, is now available. Please welcome Diana Silvera and enjoy her webinar this morning.
Thank you, Taylor. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Web Design Trends. I'm so glad all of you could join me on this cold and rainy day. Before we get started, a little housekeeping. That chat box is so important. The more all of you type into that chat box, the more all of us are going to learn today. So I encourage you to ask questions, agree, disagree, share your own insights and experience with your websites as we continue through today's session. So we have a sort of an aggressive agenda. We're going to talk about design, content, navigation, creating a connection, and some usability stuff towards the end. So lots of jam-packed. At the end of the presentation, afterwards, Taylor will send you guys a PDF link to all the slides, so don't feel like you have to write down all of the links and things like that during the session. So let's jump right into design. The biggest thing is mobile. I know that this is not revolutionary. We've been talking about mobile for several years now, but we are hitting the threshold. And I was looking at the analytics for a lot of my libraries today, and in the weeks leading up to today, and really looking at we're getting closer and closer to that 50% threshold, that our users are coming in just as much on their mobile devices as the desktop. So when you're designing and everything looks amazing on your computer, remember that that's not how people are coming in. A lot of them are coming in on their mobile, so that's got to be the primary way that you design. On the flip side, people have super wide monitors, so you're going to need to kind of make sure that responsiveness works and extends for both. I know that it's like, oh my goodness. So what is responsive? Responsive means, this is an example of my website that is in desperate need. I'm like the cobbler's, that tale where the cobbler's kids don't have shoes. That's my website because I never seem to have time to work on my own. You want to see, you can see that first image, and you can see on the mobile here, this actually does not look good. I'm not sure, Angie, is anybody else having issues with sound? I can get a little closer. Probably the galing force winds of the storm. Does that sound better? I just moved my mic to see if that... Let me just pause for a second and see if I can adjust my mic real quick. I'm going to see if I switch mics, if that helps. Is that better? Okay, great. Fantastic. That's what we like. Thank you for letting us know, Angie. So you can see, so as you're designing, you want to make sure that it will spread properly into a wide desktop view, but also that mobile will look good. And mobile, remember, is not just one thing. There's probably like 20 different versions of phones. Well, you can't, obviously we don't own all 20 phones. There's a lot of simulators and things like that out there to help you kind of look at that. But the best thing to do is ask people, hey, what phone do you have? Can you pull it out and look? I have a really old Android that I keep around. And then I have an iPhone, and then I use those modulators, and that will really help you figure out the breaking points of menus and things like that. So the other thing to think about is your menu. So the hamburger menu is these 3 little lines that you have right here. It's called a hamburger menu. People understand that that's what that is for the most part, because most websites have them now on mobile. When you do that, if you have a very complicated menu, that menu can just go and go and go and go and go. So you really want to have a separate mobile menu and have landing pages for all of your main stuff. And we'll get into landing pages in a little bit, but you want to have sort of content hubs so that you don't have to have every single thing on that menu on your mobile database, but you want to have everything accessible through your mobile device. And you can also look at having bigger buttons so you can change sort of the look a little bit, make sure they have clear buttons for the actions to take. So what I always encourage you to do is look at your analytics. What are the top things that you do on your website, that users do, not you do, but users do on your website? What are the top 3? What are the top 5 things? And those are the things you want to think about, having buttons that are really clear, really bold on that main page, especially for mobile users. And along with that, you want to think about mobile friendly. And this was kind of a new concept to me, and I was really thinking about this over the last couple months. But we all use our thumbs, right? And you think about how your thumbs work on a phone, and it's really kind of annoying when important content is up in these hard to reach areas, because our natural instinct is just to use our thumbs. So you want to kind of make sure as you're looking at your layout that you're keeping that in there. Has anybody else lost me? That's really, I don't know what's going on today. I'm going to disconnect my, oh, I just lost Dab. Karen, can you see or hear me if the critical elements on your page, do you see the slides change? Deb, are you still there?
It looks like Deb got disconnected. She should be back in here shortly.
Okay. The slides change. I don't know, maybe it's Adobe today? I'm not sure what is going on here.
Maybe.
Does anybody have any questions while we're waiting for Deb to come back? I want her to be here for the next slides. Does anybody have any questions so far about mobile? Have you tested your mobile phones, your websites on thumb friendliness, on mobile responsiveness? Okay. And I'm going to say your name wrong, and I'm so wrong. I apologize for that about me. But that's actually when you're developing, that's a great place to start, because you can start with that mobile instead of trying to retrospectively get everything working. You can start with making sure it's mobile compliant. Angie, I haven't tested LibGuides. One of the concerns with LibGuides is sometimes it's a little busy, but it should be a fairly responsive page, I would think, but I haven't tested it. All right, so we're going to keep, I see people typing. I'm going to give everybody a second. One of the main things that you'd want to look, oh, good, thank you. I'm glad, I just hate to say people's names wrong, is making sure the fonts stay large enough. And so just opening it up on your phone when you have a chance to take a look and see what looks a little weird and see what you can do for it. That's the best thing you can do for LibGuides. So going back to that front page, really what you want to do, and we're going to kind of get into some of this stuff, is make sure all the important information is in that front page. Though, mind you, we might be getting to it in a different way, and we'll talk about that later in the session, but that you really want to have your headline, you want to have call to action, no more than 2 to 3. You can't put every single thing on the front page as much as we want to. Supporting images, navigation to additional stuff, some content, your contact information. I can't stress that enough. I should be able to find your phone number and your help on every single page, and that's really important, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. One of the other trends is art and design, and I wouldn't go too far on this. Our sites are content sites. Our sites are information-based sites. They're here to provide research. They're here to provide information about the libraries. They're sort of like a flat. If your site gets too abstract and too artsy, you might it loses users. So you want, but having a little fun and bringing a little abstract design into it can be a great thing. And I just love these little sort of beehive look on this page. The other thing you're seeing is flat icons. These are they're not 3D. They give a really clean, uncluttered look, which is one of the things we're going to talk about throughout today. That's sort of one of the major trends in websites, is that clean, uncluttered. That's what people want on their websites. The icons don't have shadows. They don't have gradients. You're going to see some stuff. There's some great 2D layouts, Lottie files. You need some special CSS to get those to work, but those can bring a little bit of movement to these, but again, that flat, simple look about them. Having a little bit of animation, we're going to talk about that as we continue. It's not working in Adobe, but this the little thing kind of moves around in this video. You want to have either full backgrounds, small elements, things like that. If you're bringing that stuff in, though, you really need to make sure the file sizes are small, because they can start to bog down your site really quickly. So you might even just look at smaller animations and stuff. Okay, Deb is coming back. Great news. And it could be things that happen on loads, on scrolls. People want more than just a basic website. They want a little bit of interaction. And again, this isn't quite working in Adobe, but for example, if I hover over the unsubscribe button, maybe it gets bolder, or maybe it changes color. So I know that I'm doing something. Again, you want to make sure they kind of work on thumb as well. If I hold them down with my thumb, that something happens. But or hover and the little balls go. If you're processing something, I'm moving my hands like you can see. You know, a little circle is going when things are loading. Buttons kind of come in and out as you're doing stuff when you're hovering, especially. All of that stuff can create a little more fun in your page without creating a lot of complexity. So people want to interact. We're going to talk about connecting as we go through this. They're going to your website, so they want to connect with you. And if you want them to come back to your site more, you're going to want to have more stuff on there. You might want to look at gamification or some fun quizzes or polls. So you can put surveys. They don't have to be complex surveys up there, just little tiny mini micro surveys. In fact, the fewer questions on your surveys, it's a whole other topic, the more you're going to get. I have one library we're doing a survey right now, and it's only 3 questions, and they are getting more responses than I've ever seen on any other thing. So that is a highly effective way to do that, and you can get some really good insights into your users. So even if you have a lot of questions, maybe breaking them up into different surveys, different weeks, and trying to get people to fill them out. And the last thing here is new content. Your website is not a static thing that should never change. Even if your content is just adding new events, new resources, some blog posts, things like that, that's going to create that feel that they want to come back. You know, you don't want the little kid in your children's section to have graduated college before you update these things again. So making sure your pictures stay fresh, when you have big events at your library, regularly take pictures and regularly update that content. That will create a more dynamic page. But at the same time, minimalist. Everybody, I'm sure if I asked everybody to raise their hand, who is completely stressed out and overworked and exhausted at this point in life, with COVID for the last 100 years, we'd all be raising our hands. Everybody is feeling this way. And so you're seeing this translate into websites because nobody wants a busy website with a lot of color, bold. They're already exhausted, so that's just more exhausting to their eyes. They want muted colors, white space, very concise text. Really think about your clutter. And for libraries, the biggest place I see this is we don't want to take things down. We get, we get a new database, so we put a little feature on our front page, but then we get another database, but we don't really want to unmark it, and we don't really want to stop talking about the first one we got, so then we have two links. And I see this on everybody's websites. I'm guilty of it as well. And then we get a third database. Well, I don't really quite want it. So now, instead of one link, I have 3 links. And while that doesn't seem that bad, if we keep doing that with all of our different content, it keeps getting busier and busier and busier. So you really have to curate what you're putting on that front page and how you're doing that. And so that's really an important thing to do. And really work on that clutter control. It's just like everything else, right? Our desktop, if you saw my desktop now, you would laugh. It's, clutter control. I have 800 documents on my desktop. So making sure that we clean up our page and we weed as much as we add. You could have a hard, fast rule for yourself, like we're only going to have 6 quick links on the front page. I'm not going to put any more. So then I have to really think about what 6 that I want there, and I'm not going to pull it away. And then again, with this, that muted color. It doesn't mean you can't use a bright color here and there, but use those sparingly for accents and really keep the whole page sort of pulling down. And you're also seeing a lot of this gradient. Again, I wouldn't do the whole page in a gradient, but kind of pulling some sections or highlights or buttons into that gradient can add some flair. It can really pep up a site without adding a lot of harsh colors and bold stuff to it, and just kind of help accent something that you're trying to sort of feature. I did this recently for one of my sites with a quote that they wanted on the page. We wanted to kind of pull the quote out, but we didn't want it like bold. We just did a really light gradient underneath it, and that helped bring that sort of out a little bit to the eye, because color does do that. Any questions about colors so far or content? So one of the first things I do is create a color palette. And this is the colors that I'm going to use. And they're usually a bolder color, some lighter colors, and they sort of mix together. You can do complementary, I can't say that, analogous, I can't speak today, which is 3 colors kind of close, or triadic, which is usually what I prefer, which is kind of 3 opposite colors on the color wheel. These are some great places to do that. You can also upload your image to a lot of that, your logo, and it will pull the colors out of there and help you find complementary colors. So if you wanted, your logo is a blue, or your logo has some green and orange in it, and you want to figure out what are the other colors that will go in there, that's these tools are a really great way to do that. So then you can sort of, and then use those colors throughout, and it helps create a branding for the library. And then you can pull those same colors into your social media posts, into your digital marketing, into your print marketing, and then people recognize that that's the library. And that's really important. It kind of gives you that consistent branding throughout everything that you're doing. Any questions so far? So content. This is really one of the things to really sit back is to think about, and I want you guys all to type this in if you can think of an answer. What is the goal of your website? Yep, Otto, we're going to get into that as well, definitely, in a second. So I'm going to let everybody type something. What is the goal of your website? Bonnie's saying marketing. Anna's saying easy access to relevant information. Otto's saying to provide an online avenue for services and collections. Rochelle is to help users find out what the library offers. Melody is library classes and programs. To share information patrons can use to improve their lives. I see a couple more people typing. I'm just going to awareness of what we can offer. Tina, I read that first as awesomeness, and I was like, yes, that is our goal. So what we want, you can see that everybody has slightly different goals with their site, and that will be reflected in what your links are. If you're really just trying to, if you want to get people into your collection, that's different than promoting stuff. If you really want to focus on what your classes are and your programs, it's going to be a little bit different on how you design that front page. That's why there's no one-size-fits-all for libraries, because we do have different goals with our sites. So as you are sitting down and doing that, you need to kind of, each thing that you do, each step that you do, think through, am I doing what I'm saying that I want to do? If I really want to get them into my special collections, or I really want to get them into databases, how many barriers are in there? How easy is it? How do they understand what they're searching? Do I have sort of a facilitated search discovery layer on top that makes it super easy for them to find the information? Figure out what you're doing and how you can easily get patrons to where they need to be. And then you want to do that for each page. If it's a page for ebooks or for financial information, am I just trying to give them a list of stuff? Am I trying to help them figure out how to do this kind of research? Am I doing financial literacy with this page? You can't do everything on every page. So trying to figure out what makes sense for that page for you. And it might be that you need multiple pages for that topic to kind of cover that. And also, as for the user, if I look at your page, what do you want me to do? And that's a really important question, because we love, and I'm guilty of this as well, like I want to put all my resources here, and I look at that, and I am not sure where I'm supposed to click. There's a lot of resources listed. Which one is the one that you think is best? Maybe you should have a featured one on the top, or descriptions on which ones do what. We have some really, especially with our databases, some funky names for stuff. And it's really hard for a user who's not experienced to know what in the world they're supposed to be clicking on. And, most people, if they don't know what to do, they close the window. And that's really so they're not going to get anything out of it. They're just going to go back to Google and put in the term and get some unreliable website and move forward. I really think libraries can do really good with blogging, with tutorials and things like that to kind of help people get into this resources and find that kind of stuff. So, and then have breadcrumbs to get them to all of the other information. So key to this is navigation. So first of all, your menu. So there's this is kind of a hierarchical menu here. This is the old traditional menus. They're very hard, especially on mobile, to use. This top one is called the mega menu. They are huge hierarchical drop-down menus that have everything on them. They have a lot more links. This is, I think it's Adidas, but most websites you go to now are going to have these sort of mega menus. They're easier to navigate. One of the things to think about is, because you don't lose it on this, if you're going down, you can't see my mouse. Oops, I'm going to do my pointer here. So on this, if I'm going down and then over, especially if I'm an older person, I'm not quite techie savvy, I'm going to lose it. All of a sudden the menu is going to go away. I have to do it again. Sometimes then I get content that was underneath it, and it starts to become a very difficult site to navigate. Where up here, it's, a lot easier to kind of move through without losing it. So kind of think that, and that gives you a hierarchical thing. It makes you really think through. But each of these top things here, these clothing, accessories, should be an actual landing page, and we're going to talk about that in a second. It shouldn't be just a category. This is Adidas. It might be a little bit older. I think I took it towards the end of the year when I was starting to work on this presentation, so they might have updated, but this is an Adidas menu. It just is an example. I think Nike, I think most, you'll see these sites everywhere like this once you start kind of looking for it. You can also see if you don't have as many things, you can add stuff like icons and things like that into the section, but you want to kind of keep it simple and make sure that contrast is, but you don't want this super menu on your mobile. That's where you want to just drop it down and have like shoes, clothing, accessories, and then people can kind of navigate to it. Otherwise, that menu is going to be longer than their phones. Your menu should also be a distinctive color so it's easy to find versus the rest of your website. And an information sent means that it means something. It's not, if I just have the word hoopla on my menu, that is the most meaningless thing to most people. So you want to make sure that you have words, your descriptions, your menu headings are words that make sense. They're not library lingo, not connect to the ILS, connect to my account, things like that that will help people understand what they're actually trying to do. So you want those main things to be navigational content hub pages. These are sort of landing pages for the category. We sort of moved away from these a little bit, and this has kind of come back a lot, especially with considering that mobile use. But it gives people sort of a pattern to go through. It gives you a landing page for all of this stuff. So this is the research page for New York Public Library. Again, it might have changed a little bit. And you can kind of group all of your content there. So they have all of their stuff here. They have their databases, research help, all of that stuff. There's special collections in here. This is that main link, like shoes or accessories was on the top. So here, you're going to see library card, locations, all of these would cause a page like this to happen. It contains the links, information, and it takes you to those specific types. You could base it on services. You could base it on user type, maybe a children's page, maybe research, business major, health major. You can do things like that as you're at an academic institution. You really want to think through how users are going to use these and make sure these landing pages make sense to your users. Fonts do make a big difference, so you want to make sure that, and that's an important part of navigation. I am attracted to the bigger fonts, right? My eyes are going to read those before I read anything small. You can do a little bit fun with those header tags and do some unique fonts, but know the more unique, the more your users are not going to like it. The more unique, while it may be amazing, half the people are going to hate them. That's what that's my unscientific that I have found is the more you get into artsy stuff, the more some people like it, you have stronger reactions. When you keep to more traditional fonts, you have a site that more people, maybe it's not the most exciting thing, but people like it a little. You have a lot, people don't have this like gut reaction that they're like, oh, the library site, that's awful. They're not going to read those fonts. So you want to make sure you use header tags appropriately. Just when you work on your website, you want to think about, like when you're doing an outline in Microsoft Word, you have your title, you have your header, you have header, second smaller header, you have bullets, you have subheadings, and you want to make sure your site works that way again. Your site should be logical, and it should work its way down. This is going to help with accessibility, it helps with readability, and it just makes for a good website. So you really want to do that. You want to you don't want to just make regular text really big. If it's something important, you want to make it a header text. Next part of this is also making sure that users can help themselves. Study after study shows that users do not want to call for help. They do not want to ask for help. They do not want to chat for help. They want to solve the problem themselves. So you want to have an outlet for actual help in connecting with one of us or an Ask a Librarian or some, getting hold of the library, but you want to give them the opportunities to get their own stuff solved. So the first thing to do with that is update your page regularly. And one of the things I want to just kind of put out there to think about is if you have someone pulling services and highlights into social media, maybe they're featuring databases, maybe they're featuring a service that you offer, make sure whatever is on your social media is on your main page. Because if I saw it on social media and then I go, didn't the library say that they had home delivery? And I think I saw that on Instagram. And then I go over to the website and I can't find it. That's really frustrating. So you want to make sure that you're in sync that with those two things, your social media and your homepage. I see this a lot. I see, because the social media person is not necessarily the web person, and they wanted, I want to really highlight Hoopla, and then Hoopla is 6 links down in their website, and nobody finds it. So making sure you get that on the front page. But just update your page regularly. The more you update your content, the more it's going to be accurate, and the more you're going to be able to help your users. Keep your policies up to date, especially right now with COVID. Our policies are changing sometimes daily. They're sort of studying out a little bit, but keeping everything up to date is really important, because if I'm trying to do something and I can't figure out how to do it, or I'm told no, I'm going to go look for the policy. So you want to make sure that's up to date and have a policy about stuff. Use banners for breaking news. So this up here, this little yellow banner up here on the top of the website, I keep using my pointer and you can't see it. This is a breaking news banner. You don't want to use this all the time, but for hurricane closings, COVID news, big things, you can put something up there on your website, and that's to the user, that is an alert, and they're going to look at that first. So it's really important to use it, but use it sparingly. If you use it all the time, people sort of become blind to it and they don't notice. Really spend time looking at your help questions. If you start to get a trend where everybody's asking you a question, put it on your help page. Take off the ones that nobody ever actually asked, because we all do that. We're getting a new resource. Let's come up with some frequently asked questions, and we come up with 8 questions for that database or that service. And in reality, nobody asked 5 of them. So get those off your page. Focus on what actually is there. And again, your primary and popular services, I've said that before, should be on your home page and very easy to find. And then also, they want to help themselves, but have a clear path to a real person, because we have all been there. You're on a company's website, you're trying to do something, you cannot find the information, you're frustrated, you give up, and you just want to call someone or ask someone how to do it, or email them or something, and you can't figure out how to contact their help. It just puts your frustration over onto a new edge. So having that, here's how here's how to get help. Call, email, text, chat, whatever methods you have, get that on that page in every place possible. And one of the key places to do that is the footer. The footer is often underutilized. This is the Amazon footer, and you can see how big it is. This fat footer mentality is growing, because our pages are long. That's sort of the trend, right? We scroll through the page. If I get to your footer, I have not found what I'm looking for. So your footer is really the ultimate help location. I have looked through this whole giant page. I've scrolled down, and I still can't find what I'm looking for. So help should be there, very strongly and easily findable. But links to all of your main pages, links to some of the deeper pages that people might be looking for. You can have a flat menu that just has all of your services, sort of how this Amazon has this down here on the bottom. This is just everything. Here's all of our services. If you couldn't find it, it's almost like a sitemap. You can do things like that on your footer, and it doesn't take away from the main real estate, but it's there on every page for your users. And when they're frustrated, that is where they're going to turn. Does anybody have any questions about help so far? In content? and navigation. I see some typing. I'm just going to pause for a second. Okay, great. So hyperlinks are crucial on your site. They really help with SEO, which is search engine optimization, which we'll talk about later. But also that's kind of what we do, right? We link to resources, we type to help, services. We link to different stuff. We have some content on our pages, but mostly we're pushing people into other resources. So most of those resources are external links, and you want to have them properly identified. You want to have them with alt tags so that and titles so that people can read them. Interlinking is internal links or page links within your page that link to another thing. Like I link from services, and then I have help there, and I'm kind of cross doing that. The more you interlink, the easier your site can be to navigate, because one of the things you can discover with menus and stuff is we all think differently. So where you put something on the menu might not be inherently where the user thinks of it. So having it cross-linked in a couple places can do that. Especially help, that should be everywhere and anywhere that you can put it. But sometimes with database, our resources, our services, they kind of intertwine. So you want to make sure that you just put it where it's going to be logical. Check your links often. I can't stress this enough. If you start to have broken links on your page, users can get very frustrated, and then you look unauthoritative. It takes away your expertise when I'm clicking on links on your website and they're not going anywhere. So you want to make sure that you don't have broken links. That's when you click on it and it's just page not found. But also, especially with government sites are the worst with this, or the best, but they keep changing their links. So you link to the unemployment form, and go back and check and make sure in a month it's still linking to the unemployment form, that it's not linking to the main page of the Florida Department or something like that. You want to check for if you're linking directly to PDFs or content. Sometimes government websites won't take down the old stuff because of retentions and stuff like that, but there'll be a newer site that actually replaces it. So there might be a link to the PDF of the 2019 report on something, but there might be a 2021 report. So you need to, even though your link is still working, there's a more recent information that you probably want to be linking to. So be really careful with your links. Check them on a regular basis. You can also have buttons versus links. So when would you want them? A button is something more, to me. A link is, I'm just kind of giving you content. A button is something like, this is really important, and I'm really trying to pull focus that you want to look at this, versus just a hyperlink within my text. The other thing to avoid is click here to download, or click here for information. So there's a lot of alternatives, and I know that sometimes I get this kind of in my head, and it's really hard to move past that. But for example, click here to read our newsletter instead of just read our newsletter. You move from passive to active as well, so it's a little bit better. Let's meet, schedule a research appointment today, instead of click here to schedule a research appointment. Having that click here is sort of a remnant of the old days of the internet, and we really don't need that anymore. People understand a blue hyperlink is it's underlined, it's blue. Their mouse changes that it's a hyperlink. So you don't really have to say click here for that. Otto says to link in a new tab or a new window. I generally like external links going to separate windows, but that's just me. Otto, I have to say I didn't say anything about it because I'm having a huge internal debate about this. I actually listened to Laura Solomon the other day, and she was saying never do a new window for external links, and I like to do that. I like external links to go to a separate window. So I'm currently having an internal debate about this. I think that I still like them to go to a separate window, and not so my web page doesn't get lost. I feel like everyone's typing that other people might have bold opinions on this as well. Yeah, so Anna and Susan and are saying they agree. They like new windows as well. It's what I hate to have a duplicate tab. I wouldn't do it for internal links. I would only do it for external links if you're going to do it, and be consistent. Make sure that all of the external links are doing that. Not some are, some aren't. Make sure it's whatever you decide, that it's consistent. Yeah, I have been struggling with that all week. I listened to her presentation and it was wonderful as always, and I was left really just kind of going back and forth in my head because that was the only thing I didn't 100% agree with her on. So writing for the web, and this is really important, your website is being read on mobile phones half the time. So really think about that, because I know I cannot read on a mobile phone. If it's a really long body of text, it's not something that I'm going to look at. So the keys are to keep it simple, short and to the point. Think about bullets. Think about lists. Think about multiple headers to break up that text so that I can scroll down and I can just go, oh, here's the section I need, and read that section. Although every one of your words is amazing, people don't want to read every word. They just want the content that they need. So having multiple headers to kind of pull people down, get them into a bulleted list, step by step, 1, 2, 3, 4, let them get into that content. If it's a paragraph, it's harder for people to digest. Make sure you have a little bit, don't just do single spacing, maybe single and a half spacing, so there's a little white space between the words. Make sure that they don't get too small on your mobile devices. It needs to be easy, and it needs to be helpful. So every word needs to be important. It's not a thesis. It's a help guide. It's information on how to do something. You want to make sure it's easily digestible with them. And also have a conversation with your team. Anybody who's working on the website, you want to make sure your style and your tone is consistent. You don't want to have one page that's really casual and friendly and then one page that is very academic and you want them all to have sort of the same look and feel to them. So make sure that you work on that tone together. You know, how are you going to call, is it all students? Is it all users? How are you going to address your user base? You want to make sure that you have a sort of a good consistent vocabulary that you're using. And make sure you call services what they are properly, and it's a consistent thing. So home service, home delivery, you know, you can kind of vary your words sometimes, but make sure that you're actually using the branded name for your services. And carousels. So carousels are when you go to a website and the images kind of go by, maybe one every 5 seconds, maybe one every 10 seconds, and you have maybe 5 to 7 images on your front page or on your page. I would strongly suggest really thinking this through and really thinking about, do I need that? Yay, Otto got rid of his carousel. There are carousels are very, very problematic. First of all, they don't work well on mobile often. You are thinking that I will sit on your website, if it's every 5 seconds an image goes by and you have 7 images, that means you think that I'm going to sit on your website for 35 seconds just looking at things changing. And can you ask yourself when was the last time that you did that? I find that carousels are often that nobody wants to make a decision about what should be featured, and it's a better practice to change that image once a week or once every 3 days than to have multiple images going through, because the second one very few people are actually looking at that, and if you looked at your click-through rate, it would be really small. If you can't get rid of it, really look at what happens on a mobile device with it. Make sure that swiping would work with your carousel, so I can swipe through it on my mobile with my thumb. And you want to make sure that the images are actually linking someplace and not just flat. They're exactly, Otto. They are very tricky with ADA. That's one of the big issues with them as well. And we're going to talk about ADA in just a second. So really try and move past them. Data visualization is also one of the big trends with Concept. Instead of an article about how many, your annual report, things like that, people love stuff like that. Like we had 10,000 books downloaded last year. We had 1 million checkouts. People love that kind of stuff. Make those great infographics and put those on your website and promote them. Use little counters and graphs, like little circles that are growing on the percentage of people that have finished summer reading. Those are things that motivate people, and people love them. So getting those sort of statistic call-outs on your page can be very effective. I would do them as dynamic programs if you can. If you're using them as images, they cannot be, we'll talk about ADA, you can't just have an image that says the information. You would need to have that in some sort of text-based way so that people can read it with ADA as well. So it's a little more tricky. But you can add some dynamic programs in there that are ADA compliant. So things to make sure that you're on your page. An accessibility statement. This is a very basic statement that says if you cannot access something on our website, call this number, email this person. This can't be, you do not want to have this go to the beginning of your phone tree. It needs to go to a phone that is answered by somebody, because this is somebody who has some adaptability issue and needs help. So you don't want them to have to go through a phone tree where they have to press 2 and 4 and 6 and stuff like that. You want them to go to a phone that's going to be answered. So this might even be like an administration number or something like that. A privacy policy where you're stating what you're collecting, which opens a whole other world, because you do need to do a privacy audit probably and look at what your databases are collecting. This might not be for the whole you probably need a privacy policy for the whole library, but you also need something for your website, or at least part of that privacy policy. I feel like I'm doing a tongue twister. I apologize. A privacy policy that probably reflects the whole library, but really needs to also affect the library website. At a minimum, you probably have Google Analytics on your site, so you're collecting something from all your users. Your FAQs and your help, your content information, and your location. Especially Florida, sometimes especially with public libraries, we have similar towns in different states. For example, I live close to Dunedin. I live close to Gulfport. There's a Gulfport in Mississippi. There's a Dunedin in New Zealand. So you want to make sure you're clear on where you are located so that people know that they found the right library website. Otto's saying our locations are among the top pages, our 12 branches. Exactly, because you think that people don't know that off the top of the head. They think, oh, I think I saw a location over here, and they want to check those out. The most important thing with your website is to create a connection to your users. That's really what we want to do there. Collect email addresses for mailing lists. Mailing is more effective than any social media. If you're going to do just one thing beyond your website, it should be an email list. Collect those emails. Let me subscribe to your email. That's why that's everywhere. It's because it's really effective. It's an opt-in situation. So they collect stuff, you email them on a regular basis about programs, services, and things and resources. Using sign-up forms, ask us services, easy to find social. If you have social media, I should know it from your website. I should be able to find all of those links. You want to show me how I can connect to you. How can I become a better library, more connected to my library? How can I become not just a user who checks out books on Libby, but how can I become an engaged user in your library? That's really what you want to do with your website sometimes, that marketing aspect. How can I move past what I'm just doing and connect a little bit more with you? Adding in some case studies, testimonials, positive social proof is what they call it, where you pull in these quotes from people. We all hear them at the library. We hear our users giving amazing quotes about our services. have them jot it down on a piece of paper. Have them submit it on a form on your website. And you don't have to have their picture. It could be anonymous. But adding their stories, this will help you with funding down the road, but also it helps me understand how people use the library. And it kind of makes me feel a little warm and fuzzy to the library. Overall, the most important thing, all of that content, is that it's usable. If your site is not usable, if it's difficult to navigate, if it's difficult to find your services, nobody is going to be able to use it. And remember, you're talking about your services for your users, not as a librarian that I can find stuff on the website, because that's a totally different conversation. So one of the things to consider, and this is kind of beyond just the website, is mapping the customer experience. So if a user is going to log in, needs to use this resource, what are the steps that it takes for them to do it? And really think through how that user is going to do that. If you're in an academic institution, it's a college freshman, they need to do a paper on this. How are they going to get into the two databases that they're going to need? And think about all the steps that it takes to get there. And do you have help at each of those sort of trigger points where there's a login screen, where is there a breadcrumb that's going to kind of take them into where they need to go? For you, the public library, if they need to know programming information, do I have everything on there? If they need to register, do I have a really clear way that they have to register for the program before they can attend? And that should be an online situation. You should avoid just having them have to call, because that's a lot more steps, and you're going to lose people right in that transaction if I have to call. So really kind of, and tie in your physical stuff. Really think through all of these things. So they want home delivery. How do they get to it? What do they have to do? What are the steps? Is that reasonable for somebody who needs home delivery to be able to do all of those steps? And what can you do to minimize them? Looking at your site through a UX study. So first of all, always look at your analytics. Otto mentioned he can tell that his branches are, the location page is one of the top pages. That's because he's looking at his analytics and he's analyzing that on a regular basis. What pages are people leaving, going to and leaving? That's a bounce rate. It might be a good thing. Maybe they're leaving because they're going into a database. They don't need to be on that page that long. But maybe they're leaving and they're going to Google. That's not a good sign. So really looking through that. You can create events in Google Analytics, and that will help you understand what they're clicking on within the site. Usability studies, I cannot interview a user. Interview 3 users for a usability study, and I guarantee you will know more about your website than you ever did. You don't need a lot of people to do that. You just sit down with somebody, either on Zoom or at the library, and ask them to do 3 to 5 tasks. Put a book on hold, find out how to learn French, find out when the next program story time is, have them find the help services for the library, something like that. The 3 to 5 main things that you want people to do on your website, have them do it in front of you, and you will quickly see what they cannot do easily. I have done this multiple times, and I have found you don't need a large number of people. 2 to 3 people almost is enough, because you start to see a trend really quick on, oh, my menu makes absolutely no sense to my users, or that button doesn't work, and things like that. You can see that. And then you can use those analytics to see, yeah, people are not clicking on that button. What is wrong with it? And you can change the wording on that. So here's a bunch of different ways to do survey usability. Card sorting helps your users sort out your menus. A/B testing means that you have 2 different pages displaying sort of randomly when users come. There's a lot of software to help you do that. And then you can see maybe that a database is being accessed more when it's this version of the page than this version. So you can kind of play with your layout a little bit. Small surveys. Hot mapping is where you can see where people clicked on your page, and then again, analytics. Look at your website, take out the stuff that doesn't work. Does it need to be, if it's no longer relevant, should it be deleted? Should it be updated? If they're not using it, is it because it's not useful?
I'm just going to skip here because we're running low on time. I talk too much today. ADA is the other really important thing on your site. Good ADA compliance means a better user experience for everybody. It doesn't matter if people have any kind of adaptive need. ADA compliance makes for a good website. So you want to make sure you use alt tags, which are an alt tag for this would be the actual text, the library is closed, so that a screen reader could actually read it. This also helps with Google because they can analyze what that image is, because Google can't read an image. Heading, your tags are right, your color contrast is enough. If we've all been on a website or read a magazine or looked at something that had yellow with blue writing and you can't read one word that it's saying, you need to make sure that that contrast level is really high. PDF documents are a whole different bear. They need to be analyzed separately. You need to actually have a PDF, Adobe PDF DC, which will help you check for compliance, or use an outside source, because that is, in Florida especially, that is a big trigger point for lawsuits, is to make sure PDFs are ADA compliant. So you should not convey information by image alone if you can avoid it. They can't be translated beyond just screen readings and stuff like that. If English is not my first language, I cannot cut and paste the text from your image and put it into a translator. And this is on social media as well. You need to type that text out so that someone can translate it. Otherwise, you're eliminating all of those users from the experience. Sometimes it's really small on mobile, so you need to be careful that the image, when it's responsive, doesn't go so small that nobody can read it. So 2 tools that can help you. Totally, which is a website plugin. It goes right on in your browser. You click on it, and it will help you analyze all of this stuff. One of the things I really like about Totally is the contrast. This is a picture of it right now. If something doesn't pass their contrast, they will recommend what colors to use to help you get to that level of contrast that you need. Because contrast is not just, it's, there's a lot of people with color blindness, over 40ness, I'm going to call it. I find contrast is more and more important to my life as I edge towards 50. Wave AM, you can either do a browser plugin, or you can take a site URL, put it in, and it will analyze it for you and tell you what needs to be adjusted for adaptability. There is no automated solution that will just make sure that your site will fix everything. It is good practice is what's going to make your site ADA compliant. It means, as Otto says, he regularly checks. I regularly check my sites to make sure. Every time I do an update, I run an ADA check to make sure what I did did not undo something that was ADA compliant. It's really important to just stay on top of that and be diligent with it. Make sure your site stays fast. Nobody wants a site that takes forever to load. Some of the common issues are inappropriately sized images. Our computers have giant images. We take pictures off our cameras, and they're 10 gigabytes. Those are giant for a website. You can shrink them down, you can smush them, you can compress them. Make sure they're appropriately sized. It should be under 100 kilobytes for an image for the most part. And you can have a giant image for your website under that. Make sure your code is appropriate and that your server is good for that. Making sure your site is search engine optimized, which means you're going to use keywords. You're going to make sure you have authority. The better sites that you link to, the more authority you have. The more people that visit your site, the more authority you have. So quality, relevance, authority are going to lead to good Google search results. And when you think, I'm a library, I don't need Google search results, that's how people look for stuff. They don't search on your site necessarily. They'll put in library, downloadable movies, and that's what they're searching. And Google's going to say it's the Palm Harbor Library, and taking me to that database page. That's how people are going to find our sites. So they don't necessarily go to our front page and navigate it. So this is really important for that. Do spend some time in Google utilizing Google Business because this will help your search, your website. And this is how Google pulls information out for your website. In the future, we're going to be talking more about making sure our websites are Alexa friendly. You should start thinking about this now. This is happening. You can create skills for Alexa. We can bring AI into our sites with chatbots for some frequently asked questions. And in the future, we're going to be on the metaverse. So how is your library website going to be there? Is it going to be just the same as it is, or are you going to start building out your library for the metaverse where I can walk through your library in virtual reality and interact? Are you going to bring AR into your library so when I'm physically in the library, if I look at something, I can get additional information? The future is coming quickly for this. So it's time, maybe we're not there yet, but it's time to start thinking about what does my library look like in the day of the metaverse. So just something to kind of leave you on to think there. I have lots of links in these slides for you to kind of go through and look at. And that's my email address. I know we're hitting the top of the hour and some of you have places to be. But I can stay on if you have questions, if you need me to go over something again. And I'll get Taylor a PDF of this so that you can look through the slides at your leisure. And always feel free to contact me with questions or concerns. So is there any takeaways that you guys have today you want to share? Any thoughts or questions or disagreements with me you want to add? Thank you, Anna. It's always great to have you in a class. Yep, Karen, Taylor will get that to you. Otto, thank you for all your feedback in the class. And it was good to see you online. Oh, great. Thank you. I'm glad you did.
Well, while the last person is typing, thank you, Diana, for such an informative webinar. As always, we encourage you to keep an eye on the Swiftland CE calendar, the Swiftland Facebook page, or your message from the listserv. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and have a great rest of your day.